One Mediator Media here with our midweek report. There's so much going on out there. There's fighting over SCOTUS, there's poison in envelopes, there's much more, there's fraud. And so we're here to lay the news out and see what we think. So don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and let's just go and mediate.
So we're going to put up our nominee who's going to be outstanding. We're looking at 5 incredible jurists, 5 incredible people.
This is a man who does not care about a dying woman's final wish.
Women that are extraordinary in every way. I mean, honestly, it could be any one of them. We're going to be announcing it on Friday or Saturday.
Here in 2018, we have a report by NPR, and it says what happened with Merrick Garland in 2016 and why it matters now. Okay, so when we review this quickly, it says, to recap, Garland was nominated to fill the 2016 vacancy on the Supreme Court created by the death of that February of Justice Antonin Scalia, an icon of conservative jurisprudence. President Barack Obama quickly named Merrick Garland, then 63, to fill the seat. Garland had long been considered a prime prospect for the High Court, serving as Chief Justice and on the U.S. Court of Appeals for District of Columbia Circuit. So it carries on here. It says, but even before Obama had named Garland, in fact, only hours after Scalia's death was announced, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell declared any appointment by sitting president to be null and void. And so it became more of a, because I am here, I'm not going to allow it. But Obama, hours after the death was announced, he announced that he had a person ready to go. And so we're in the same situation now, and there's no difference. So if Obama could have, he would have appointed that person. Trump, if he can, he will appoint the person. Why? Well, let's take a look. So if we look at the Article 2 of the Constitution, Clause 2, Section 2, it says, he shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. And he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. And so if the president has the consent of the Senate, then he can nominate. And that's clearly the case. Now, in Obama's case, he nominated, did not have that consent, and it's just the way it is. Let's move on. So we have Portland protests continue after fiery wildfires and vigil for RBG. And so I guess there was a vigil for RBG, which is fine. I mean, they want to pay their respects. And so, but after that, then they went about 200 Black Lives Matter demonstrators gathered in Oregon City around 9 p.m. Saturday and marched through downtown, at times smashing store windows and tagging buildings with graffiti, Fox News reported Sunday. The protests had been put on pause. We are living in a climate emergency, and unprecedented wildfires created conditions that made the streets protests impossible, and emergency mutual aid work became our priority. So ultimately, they're claiming it was the fires. Don't know. It could have been. Some are saying it was Trump's orders that he had put in terms of deputizing and so on and so forth. Whatever the case, they're back. And so, though not full-fledged from the sounds of it, I mean, I'm not seeing too much out there in terms of chaos. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. Secret documents show how North Korea launders money through U.S. banks. And so this particular article here, it shows that North Korea has been laundering some funds here and there. It says North Korea carried out an elaborate money laundering scheme for years using a string of shell companies and help from Chinese companies. And so they've been laundering money. And from the looks of it, it was a good lump sum, but it was millions and millions of dollars. The leaked the leaked documents are part of the FinCEN files, a collaborative project with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, BuzzFeed News, NBC News, and so on and so forth, 400 journalists apparently. And so it says the documents cover a period mainly from 2008 to 2017, during which both the Obama and Trump administrations tightened sanctions against North Korea to try to prevent the regime from building up its nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles arsenal. And so here it says that it amounted to more than 174.8 million over several years, with the transactions cleared through U.S. banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase and the Bank of New York Mellon, according to documents. And so a ton of money. Doesn't say quite as far as what I've read. Perhaps there's more out there, but in terms of what it was used for, we'll keep an eye out for that. Let's continue. So our next story here is about a Canadian woman was arrested for allegedly sending an envelope with ricin to President Trump. And so ultimately, We covered this shortly during the last episode, but on this episode, we actually have the person that they got. And so it's a Canadian woman. We talked about Canada. I'm not sure what was going on with Canada. The people of Canada, some of them are really against what's going on here. And so they're actually trying to fight against it somehow. A Canadian woman accused of sending poison ricin in an envelope to the White House was charged in federal court Tuesday with threatening President Donald Trump. Quebec, again, forgive me if I say the name incorrectly, Pascal Cecil Veronique Ferrier Laval of Quebec could face 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000 if found guilty. Pretty severe situation here. In the letter, the complaint state Ferrier demanded that President remove his application for the election. I made a special gift for you, it says, to make a decision. So she allegedly wrote, apparently referring to the Ricin, and she's been kind of at it. It sounds like, from what I read, there were also some other instances where she sent, I think it was 6 letters similar to Texas, another situation that she was involved in. This lady needs to be locked up. So let's move on. The pepper spraying of a 7-year-old boy at BLM protests in Seattle was lawful and proper. Report finds. Okay. And so we've all seen this picture of this child, and it happened back during all that craziness in Seattle. And it turns out that it was considered lawful. And let's find out why. It says a high-profile incident in which a Seattle police officer doused a 7-year-old boy with pepper spray at a Black Lives Matter protest, lawful and proper, the results of a police probe released Friday said. And so it says, according to the report, the officer directed the pepper spray to a woman who grabbed onto an officer's baton and yelled, "Don't push me, you move back," as the police tried to move a line of protesters standing in Westlake Plaza. And so ultimately, it says the nauseous spray also inadvertently hit the child standing behind her, the report said. And so this is found as lawful because it wasn't intended for the child. They didn't spray the child. Obviously, the news didn't know that. They jumped on the conclusions there. I think the point here, if we mediate it and we talk about what the issue is, don't take your kids out to this. I wouldn't take my kids out to this stuff. It's crazy out there. We know it. We see burning buildings, people being attacked, so on and so forth. Peaceful protest, yes, but protect the children. People, again, if you're in the crossfire and something's going on, you need to be aware and mindful of it. Now, personal responsibility, I wouldn't take my kids out there. But again, if it were to happen and you're out there, again, you got to be aware. Things happen. It's nuts out there. And so our next story, CDC shifts guidelines about airborne transmission of COVID-19, then retracts it. Okay, so Friday, apparently the CDC put out some new guidelines on the transmission of COVID-19. And this Monday, a few days later, they retracted it. So here we are again. CDC does not know what the heck is going on. They keep on changing the story on us. And again, is it just to keep us confused, keep us on edge? I don't know. Some people are saying it's because Trump is putting pressure on them. Okay, well, either way, you are responsible for what you put out. And CDC says it was a draft. So something like this is coming out. And ultimately, here's what it was saying. There's growing evidence that droplets and airborne particles can remain suspended in the air and be breathed by others and travel distances beyond 6 feet. For example, during choir practice, in restaurants, or in fitness classes. The agency said in its guidance, in general, indoor environments without good ventilation increase the risk. The CDC retracted its new guidance on Monday, claiming it had erroneously posted a draft of changes. And so ultimately, they don't even know who posted it or how, but somehow it was posted on there, and this is information that is set to come. So I think we should just err on the side of caution. Again, if you're out, be careful. If you're out, be aware. If you're out, wear your mask. Take care of yourself. You can't quite trust what's being said here. If they have this information, they're not putting it out. They're not really taking care of us. Let's continue here. Massive allegation of fraud have forced California to temporarily stop paying new unemployment benefits. And so apparently there's been a massive amount of fraud out there. It says last week it was reported that the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, a federal government program that was part of a $2.2 trillion relief package and designed to extend unemployment benefits to self-employed people, independent contractors, those engaged in gig economy, part-time workers, and others who were previously deemed ineligible for unemployment insurance, was plagued with allegations of fraud. And so people are using this. This is reported by, Forbes. And so ultimately, to go with that, another story that's related, 44 arrested in California for EDD fraud, totaling more than 2.5 million, police say. And so apparently there are many groups out there, and this is by ABC 30 Fresno. There are many people out there that are committing fraud. and lots of billions and millions of dollars that are being taken up by people who are abusing the system. So, what do you do about this? You know, it's unfortunate. There will always be people who take advantage of situations, and unfortunately, here's another. Let's move on. Okay, so House passes short-term spending bill to avoid government shutdown. The House approved, and this is put out by ABC News. The House approved late Tuesday night in a 359-57 to 1 vote a stopgap bill to avoid government shutdown at the end of the month. Okay, we talked about this before, and here it is. So the deal will add nearly $8 billion to continuing resolution for food and nutrition service assistance programs, and funding for farmers and agricultural community is also included. Okay, so that's great. I'm glad they're doing this. It's not just for that, and we know that. But again, I'm glad they're at least passing something. But let's move on to that stimulus deal, which is actually going to help some people as well. So this is great. Move forward. At least something came of it. It says here Democrats have renewed the vital expiring lifeline of pandemic EBT for a full year and enabled our fellow Americans in the territories to receive this critical nutrition assistance. Okay, in this article, it says public support for Black Lives Matter has dropped since June, report finds. And so obviously with all the craziness that's happening right now, there's been a shift in terms of the support for this program or whatever you want to call it. A majority of adults, 55%, said this month that they support the movement. Okay, so a little more than half of the population in the U.S., but it's a notable drop from the 67% who said the same between June 4th and 10th. Now, we got to think about that. This is back in June, and so prior to June, let's just think about the time of George Floyd. I mean, it really skyrocketed, that support. And so right now we're seeing that drop. It says that the report by Pew Research Center. The numbers dipped to 29% September 8th and 13th from 38%. About 3 months prior. And so this is put out by CNN, and they're saying the share of Black adults who said this month that they support Black Lives Matter movement, 87%, has ticked up 1%. So in the Black community, it hasn't quite dropped. It's at 80, I guess 87% now. Was it 86? In June, 60% of white adults said they strongly or somewhat supported the Black Lives Matter movement this month. 45% of white adults expressed the same sentiments. Among Hispanic adults, support in those categories dropped from 77 to 66%. So overall, with different groups, it's dropping. And obviously, let's talk about the reason. Let's mediate that. Well, with riots, with fires, with people being shot and killed, with people claiming to be Marxists, with, all these different issues that surround this movement, it begins to look not so much about protecting Black lives, especially when those Black lives are being affected by the movement itself and nobody really cares. And there are other instances like in Chicago where all these things are happening, children being killed and constant violence and other things, and nothing's really said or done about that. So if it was really about Black lives, that probably would be addressed. And I think that's why this is dropping now. If it was something called, police brutality or something against something specific, and that's what's being addressed, which is what Black Lives Matter is addressing, that may have actually more of a push. But right now, the claim of the group is not really looking like it's supporting that area.
The Justice Department announced Monday that New York City, Seattle, and Portland would be designated as jurisdictions, quote, permitting violence and destruction of property under President Trump's early September order requiring federal agencies to submit potential funding cuts for cities, quote, permitting anarchy.
Okay, and so this report here by The Hill, it's DOJ designates New York, Portland, Seattle as permitting anarchy. And ultimately, so what Trump is coming out and saying is that these cities and these mayors and these states, because the governors are involved as well, are not requesting the support from the federal government, which has been offered to them. And instead, their cities are being burned down. They're being attacked. Citizens are being hurt by it. You name it. Things are happening that shouldn't. Typically, we have these people who are in charge and these people who run these cities, and the people vote them in for the purpose of protecting, the purpose of supplying for the city, the purpose for everything, and just like we elect our presidents and everything else. And they haven't been doing their job. And part of their job is to, if they need support from the federal government, which they're a part of, they should request it. And that's why Trump and Barr are pretty much saying that we're not going to do that. So it says here, when state and local leaders impede their own law enforcement officers and agencies from doing their jobs, it endangers innocent citizens who deserve to be protected, including those who are trying to peacefully assemble and protest, said Attorney General William Barr. We cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. It is my hope that the cities identified by the Department of Justice today will reverse course and become serious about performing the basic function of government and start protecting their own citizens. And so ultimately, let's talk about that. Let's mediate that one. So again, we have these cities and they're not doing their job. We had Chaz, we had CHOP, we had an attempt in Portland. There was even an attempt over in DC, if I remember correctly, which was shut down pretty quickly, of taking over city blocks and just doing these things. This is not okay. It's not minority rule. If you look at the population of these cities and you look at the population of that's out there being destructive, no, it's not what all the people want. And so in our country, we rule in our country, we run our country by what's best for the majority of the people. Whatever's happening there, it needs to be quelled, stopped, and that's it. And that's why in this situation, I think this is probably a wake-up call. I don't wish that these government agencies, these cities, be affected by it financially, but hopefully it's a wake-up call to where they begin to at least work in a nonpartisan way, and they begin to look at the best interests of their community as opposed to the best interests of their position, of their power, whatever it is. I'm not even sure where they're going with this. It just seems like it's a blatant attack against what's best for the area. And so here's a little video for you guys to finish off. See what you think. I think we need to be careful with our language, and you'll see what I mean right now. When it comes to trying to incite certain things in the public, I'm not so sure it's a good idea, especially given the situation. Especially when certain members of society say that they're not inciting violence, they're not doing this, that, and this. Let's just see what that means.
No matter what happens, everybody sticks with their team.
We're going to have to blow up the entire system. And you know what we're going to have to do?
No, I don't know.
You know what we're going to? Yes,
yeah.
we're going to have to do.
You just got to vote.
Honestly, from what your closing argument is, you're going to have to get rid of the Electoral College, because the people.
I don't see it.
Because the minority in this country decides who the judges are, and they decide who the president is.
But you need a constitutional amendment to do that.
And if Joe Biden wins, Democrats can stack the courts, and they can do that amendment, and they can get it passed.
Okay, so overall, yes, they could do that, yes, if you go the right route, like he was mentioning towards the end. But let's not say we're going to blow this up and blow that up. It's just not a good time to use that language. I'd say probably better ways to approach that. So anyway, that's all we got. So that's it for today's show, guys. Thank you guys for stopping by. Remember, like, subscribe, hit the bell, come back, ask questions, comments, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.